Welcome to the February 18th edition of Gold and Black Live, joined by Brian Newbert and Tom Dienart for segment one. Segment two will be interesting, at least really looking forward to the conversation with Brad Fultz and Kelsey Dawson, Purdue's mental health staff psychologists. And they're really interesting. If history's any teacher, they'll have a lot of interesting things to say. And of course, Matt Folk, who is Purdue for Life, will join us in segment three. Has a lot to do with hands and a lot of different things at universities, including athletics. Brian, never a dull moment. Obviously, Purdue, the Boilermakers, will have a chance for redemption, revenge against Rutgers, but in a game that really may go a long way to deciding the Big Ten, at least who might get a share of the Big Ten regular season championship. Not sure we'd have predicted that based on the December 9th meeting, but what happened in that meeting certainly it makes Sunday's game even more interesting. And the fact that the Boilermakers are hopefully, from a Purdue perspective, a chance to get another Big Ten victory at home.
Yeah, obviously Purdue owes Rutgers one or five, 6, 7, maybe. Yeah. They've lost 4 in a row to Rutgers. Obviously,
hard to imagine.
Obviously, the loss in Piscataway back in December, that was a long time ago, obviously. But that's one that, has kind of echoed through the season here. Yeah. I think if you're Purdue, you'd rather have Ron Harper play. Obviously, he's dealing with something with his hand or whatever it was that happened to him the other day against Illinois. But if I'm Purdue, I want to see Ron Harper. I don't want them to be shorthanded. I want redemption on what happened back in December. Now, you take the win however you can get it, provided you can get it. But I think this is kind of a demon Purdue needs to exercise here, not just because of what happened in December, but what's happened the last couple of years. You remember, had there been an NCAA tournament 2 years ago, it would have been that Rutgers loss that would have almost certainly kept Purdue out of it. Purdue owes them one. And obviously, Purdue, every game really, really matters for Purdue right now because they're alone in first place in the Big Ten, and they aspire to stay there. Purdue's got some difficult road games left ahead. So this isn't just going to come down to this Rutgers game, but Purdue's, might have to win that game at Wisconsin, depending on how things shake out from here. But I think you got to have this one. You obviously have to have this one. Rutgers is hot as hell right now. They have been Purdue's greatest ally, really, in its aspirations for a Big Ten title. So I think what you want to do is you want to beat them, and then you want to thank them because they saddled the loss on Wisconsin. They saddled the loss on Illinois, and they have put Purdue in the position here where this game matters so much to them in the Big Ten race. But I think Purdue is going to be in a good spot here. I think they've improved defensively the last couple games. I think Jaden Ivey will be better after this little mini break, which, this time of year, one day off might as well be a week off because of what you've been dealing with here for the last couple of weeks. I think Purdue will put its best foot forward here on Sunday, and obviously has to.
I, for one, don't want Ron Harper to play. How about that? I don't care. A win's a win at this point, right?
Well, yeah, but we say that, and Michigan State lost to Northwestern without Pete Nance. Purdue, had to hang on for dear life in that first Iowa game without Keegan Murray. That's kind of one of the stories that I've been making fun of in terms of the whole Big Ten season, is that nothing seems to matter.
Yeah.
Illinois beat Michigan State at home when Michigan State was, better than Michigan State is right now without Kofi Cockburn and Andre Curbelo. Purdue got Kofi Cockburn in foul trouble in Champaign and had to fight like hell to win that game. Purdue got Trace Jackson Davis in foul trouble at Indiana, lost that game. Nothing matters. But it is basketball nihilism at its finest. Nothing matters.
I don't think Geo Baker played against Purdue and New Brunswick either. But long story short, if I had my choice to play Rutgers with Ron Harper, without Ron Harper, obviously I don't want to see Ron Harper. And I know it's like you said, you painted the picture, Brian. Anything can happen. I get it, but it ought to be a fun contest. It's going to be a great atmosphere, obviously, too. I think Purdue probably has to win out here if it wants to win the Big Ten. That's just me thinking. I just think they're going to have to win out. I think they can, obviously. What, you got Rutgers and IU at home. You got to go to East Lansing. You got to go to Madison. Michigan State, the wheels look like they're coming off, right?
Mhm.
I think Wisconsin's a little bit overrated. Always tough, obviously, winning the Kohl Center. The Rutgers just did that recently, but still. And I think, Painters had some success up there too of late, if I recall. So again, it's going to be just a fun stretch run here for the team and the fans, I think. And I guess, Brian, if you had a to-do list, 2 or 3 to-do list for Purdue to close this thing out, what would be your pecking order of things Purdue needs to check off if it wants to finish this season with a flurry and at least get a share of the Big Ten championship?
It's a one item list right now.
Okay.
Because I think turnovers have shifted back, replacing half court defense as Purdue's greatest existential threat here, because the blueprint for Purdue losing here has been turning the ball over, not just at the end, but in the first half. They've squandered too many possessions. That has compromised their defense at times. Earlier in the season, that's the sort of thing that got offenses going and thus led to more of the defensive problems. I'm not saying that Purdue has arrived from a defensive perspective. They still have a long way to go, and Johnny Davis and potentially Ron Harper Jr. still loom. But I think they've just got to do a better job taking care of the basketball. They are still so vulnerable to these little runs of turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
It even happened at Northwestern. It didn't matter when all was said and done, but there was a stretch there in the first half where Purdue just started turning the ball over again. And a lot of that was on the big guys, but it was kind of on everybody too. Purdue's just got to get that under control. I know it's easier said than done, and I know it's almost February 20th here, but expecting a team to just change, with 4 games left in the regular season, however many they have left, is probably not a reasonable assumption. But I think that's the biggest thing that Purdue has to get under control here if they're going to finish this season off the way they want to finish the season off, and obviously do what they want to do in the postseason.
You look at free throw shooting, obviously, and Matt Painter has talked about, you've written about it. Nobody goes to the free throw line wanting to miss, but that also has been a challenge. It's something that Purdue has shown at times. So I think it's 13th in the league right now in free throw shooting, but it has shown at times the ability to make free throws consistently. It hasn't. It didn't at the end of the Northwestern game. It's had some struggles in games this year, obviously the Indiana game. How do you view that and putting that in a thing? I know it's not something, it's a concentration issue, but I don't know that Purdue has flaws, with maybe exception of the center position with Edey and Williams. But how do you view that in terms of how far this team can go and that correlation of the ability to make free throws?
Yeah, I don't want to throw the word outlier around because when you have too many outliers, they're not outliers anymore.
Yeah.
But I thought that was just a weird last 2 minutes at Northwestern, because that
went on for a half hour.
That was Mason Gillis missing a 1-on-1. Mason Gillis was an 88% free throw shooter coming in. Isaiah Thompson,
85%. Yeah.
85%. He misses a 1-on-1. It's not like, your worst foul shooters were going to the foul line. Eric Hunter has been okay this year at the foul line. He has a bit of a history for whatever reason, sort of late in games. He's missed some free throws before. I don't think that game was in any question. I think the fact Northwestern got a 3 off that would have got them within 6, kind of made it look like it was closer than it was. Had that shot gone in, all of a sudden now you start to panic a little bit. But I think that, Purdue just kind of spazzed out at the foul line at the wrong time. And I don't think that's necessarily a reflection of their enduring reality from here on out.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of, I don't know if I'll call it angst, I'll call it discussion, a lot of debate. Brian, does it really matter if Purdue's a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament in your mind?
Not really, because you're still going to have to go through that 1 or 2 seed anyway. I think you're in a pretty good spot here where you're still going to play through some geographic advantages. I think the difference between a 16 and a 15 seed is such that if a game against a 15 seed is more difficult for you than a game against a 16 seed, then you probably shouldn't be a 1 or a 2 anyway. I don't think so. I don't think it's that big a deal. I think it's good from a prestige perspective. You could make the argument that, hey, it puts more pressure on you too, because people are putting you under the microscope a little bit more. And, if you lose, it comes with a little bit more, failure associated with it. That being said, I think you obviously want to lay for yourself the best path you can get. And typically that would come through a number 1 seed. But I don't think it's all that big a deal personally.
Yeah, location is interesting. Purdue, I suppose, could still be a 2 seed and play in Indianapolis and then potentially in Chicago. I don't know that anything. I haven't really looked at it to map it out. Of course, everybody's guessing at this point who's going to be. And if Purdue runs the table, well, they run the table and win the Big Ten tournament, they're going to be a number 1 seed. I don't think there's any question about that. That's a big if. I get that, and that will be a storyline that it's always been a conversation piece. But I'm starting to come around the way of thinking that Purdue just needs to get out and play and put its best foot forward, and it can do that as a 2 seed or a 1 seed. I buy that argument a little bit about.
Real quick, for what it's worth. Purdue was a number 2 seed in 1990, 1998. 1990, of course, they played in Indianapolis as a 2 seed.
Right, they did.
And then 1998, they played in Chicago, and then they came to St. Louis. So I guess, long story short, 2 seed, Purdue, you'd think, would still get a good geographic location for the tournament.
Yeah, Purdue's been a number 1 seed 3 times and made it to the Elite 8. Once in that environment, Sweet 16, and only the round of 32. So again, none of that really matters, I suppose, with this group, but it's interesting standpoint. Go ahead. We got time for a little bit more. Go ahead, Brian.
One thing I will say, a historical perspective doesn't matter at all, because the game has changed so much from so many of these past, NCAA tournament appearances for Purdue. Agree. The game is so 3-point driven. So much of this is just going to come down to, are you making shots? Is your opponent making shots? That's kind of basketball nowadays. And that's what makes, the NCAA tournament even more of a crapshoot than ever. And if you're a 1 seed, if you're a 2 seed, if you're a 15 seed, if you get red hot from 3, as Purdue a couple of years ago showed, you're going to win games. So I think seeding in general might even matter less than ever before, just because it's like running into the wrong pitching staff in the postseason in baseball at the wrong time. If you just run into a team that's hot, if you run into a team that creates matchup problems for you, you're gonna, it doesn't matter what number's next to your name, you're gonna struggle. Purdue showed that last year.
Yeah, it's going to be, that's what I think is, it has the game continues to evolve at that level, and there isn't any doubt that that up and down 3-point shooting, and you can't always control that. That's what's going to make this a fascinating 2022 tournament. So, guys, appreciate your time very much in segment 1. We'll be back. And want to thank also our sponsors, Triple X, On the Hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. State Farm agent Trent Johnson, Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day. State HDI tonight. We'll be joining segment 2. Again, Purdue's 2 athletic department staff psychologists, really interesting folks. Kelsey Dawson and Brad Fultz will share some of the challenges they've been dealing with, and as Purdue students, athletes have been as well. And again, segment 3 with Matt Folk from Purdue for Life. So, guys, we'll be back. Make sure you also tune into our Saturday simulcast and our YouTube channel. We've had a lot of interest, not only that, for Brian's rap videos as well after each Purdue basketball game. If you have a chance to view those, well worth your time. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple minutes on Gold and Black Live.